Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today. My name is Roxanne Coulterman. I am the Contracts Coordinator for the Texas Lottery Commission. This is the pre-proposal conference for the Advertising Media Services RFP number 362-2022-0003. On the panel today, we have Angela Skyby-Zagarba. She is the Contracts and Facilities Manager, Eric Williams, Hub Coordinator, Lee Gary, Senior Contracts Attorney, Ryan Mendel, Lottery Operations Division Director, and Heidi Moreno, Advertising and Promotions Manager. Now, if you haven't done so already, please scan the QR code with a mobile device or use the link that was provided to sign in. A copy of the sign-in sheet will be posted on the ESPD Electronic State Business Daily and the Texas Lottery website prior to the end of the next business day. This is for sharing of information between prime vendors and subcontractors. Communication will be primarily through the ESPD and the Texas Lottery website. Emails will also be used for the RFP. We strongly advise you to check with your IT department to ensure that our emails will not be filtered away. Some businesses block out the phase lottery, so you won't be able to receive emails from the Texas Lottery Commission if the filter does not allow it to come through. This conference is being recorded. If you have any questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A feature throughout the conference, and we will answer in the order received during the question and answer session at the end of each part. Our Contracts and Facilities Manager, Angela, will be monitoring the Q&As. We will review the recording after the conference and reinstate the questions and answers in the Q&A document, which will be released in accordance with the schedule of events. We will give our best response to your questions today. However, any questions we cannot answer today will be answered in writing and included in the Q&A document. Please note the written Q&A document is our final answer. Following this conference, if you think of additional questions, you have an opportunity to submit these in writing. These are your opportunities to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so regarding the requirements of the RFP. If you are unsure of language written in the RFP or need further clarification, this is your chance to receive the information you need. After proposals are received, it is then the Texas Lottery's time to ask questions and/or seek clarification if needed. Please note that any oral communication that will alter or amend the RFP as written is not binding. Any and all changes or modification to the RFP will be made in writing and posted on the ESPD and the Texas Lottery's website. You are encouraged to check these websites throughout this process and once more before submitting a proposal. Please note that there may be several RFPs posted on the TLC website at one time, so be sure that you are viewing the correct RFP for updates. This RFP is open to any and all vendors who perform the services. To submit a proposal, you do not have to be registered on the CMBL, Centralized Masters Bidders List, be Hub certified, nor is there any approved vendor list. We will now briefly review the RFP by parts. While we may discuss only certain sections or provision of the RFP during this conference, all sections and provision of the RFP are important, and you should read and understand the entire RFP before submitting your proposal. Again, you'll have an opportunity after each part to ask general questions. So let's begin with Part 1, General Information. Section 1.4, Schedule of Events. This section includes critical dates for this procurement. If there are any changes to these dates up to the deadline for proposals, an amendment will be posted on the ESPD and the Texas Lottery website. Section 1.7. Because we are a state agency, proposals are subject to the Public Information Act, aka Open Records. During the procurement process, we will not release any information contained in your proposal. However, after a contract is awarded, your entire proposal is subject to this act and is considered public information. If there is any information in your proposal that is confidential or exempt from the disclosure under the Texas Public Information Act, you must mark it as confidential. Example of confidential information may be financial information or information that you consider trade secret or proprietary. It is important that you mark every applicable page and/or section that you consider confidential, and if possible, mark which exception of the Texas Public Information Act it falls under. The Public Information Act is located under Texas Government Code Chapter 552. On the Office of Attorney General's website is the Public Information Handbook, which lists all the exceptions. If you have information that you consider confidential, please respond to Section 1.7 and list the information, including a brief commentary or justification, in addition to marking individual sections and pages. Angela, are there any questions for Part 1?
Good afternoon, Roxanne. Yes, we have a few questions, so let me go through them. The first question is, will the sign-in sheet be made public and posted to the procurement site updates? And the response is yes, it will be posted. Second question is, can this be recorded and shared for team members? The answer is yes. The video will be shown on the website, the Texas Lottery's website, and the link will also be provided on the electronic State Business Daily. So you'll be able to find links to the conference on both those websites. Someone was kind enough to ask if anybody's looking for subcontractors. I'm going to read this to all of you so that any subcontractors can potentially contact this person to team up. Is anyone looking for subcontractors? If so, I'm available for subcontracting opportunities. My name is Damian Lawson, the founder and CEO of 365 Ideas, LLC, and he put his website address. I have over 20 years of marketing and advertising experience and a BA in marketing. I'm a minority veteran, disabled veteran, and Hub certified business. And he lists his contact information with the phone number being 281-978-0368. So that person is looking to partner up if anybody's interested. And I do not see any additional questions at this time, Roxanne.
Okay, thank you, Angela. So I will go on to Part 2. Proposal process. As stated in Section 2.1, I'm the sole point of contact for this RFP. All questions should be directed to me, including Hub questions. Section 2.4. Questions shall be submitted via email by the deadline in the schedule of events. Responses will be posted on the websites, on both websites, TLC and ESBD. Section 2.5. Proposals shall be submitted in the format prescribed in this section. Proposers have the option to submit proposals either hard copy or electronically. If you submit a hard copy under Section 2.5.1, hand or overnight delivery submission, you need to submit 1 original and 3 copies. The original proposal should be clearly marked as original and must be bound in a 3-ring binder. The Hub Subcontracting Plan should also consist of 1 signed original and 2 copies, which may be in a separate folder. The signed original cost proposal should be contained in a separately sealed envelope as an attachment to the original proposal. If you submit an electronic copy under Section 2.5.2, electronic delivery submission, electronics responses shall be sent via email to procurement@lottery.state.tx.us. The subject line on the email shall contain the RFP name and number along with the proposer's name. Please submit 1 signed original proposal, 1 signed original Hub Subcontracting Plan, and 1 signed original cost proposal in separate PDFs. Be sure that your proposal contains responses to all sections and parts of the RFP, and be sure your proposal numbering corresponds with that of the RFP. You may provide a blanket acknowledgement and acceptance for parts 1, 2, and 3, unless a section requires a specific detailed answer. Parts 4, 6, 7, and 8 require a section-by-section response. That means for our section 4.1, we are looking for a 4.1 in your response that corresponds with the RFP. For Part 5, for hand or overnight delivery, complete and submit 1 original and 2 copies of the HSP. This can be in a separate 3-ring binder or folder. For electronic delivery, submit 1 signed original. For For hand or overnight delivery, the cost proposal should be in a separately sealed attachment to the original proposal containing one signed original. For electronic delivery, please submit one signed original. If proposers feel a section does not provide a detailed response, it is acceptable to state that you agree and will comply. Section 2.5.7. The proposer's commitment, Attachment A, and the background information certification, Attachment D1, must be signed by an officer or agent of proposer with the authority to contractually bind the proposer, and the original attachment must be included in the original proposal. Section 2.5.10. In addition to the printed proposal, you are required to submit an electronic copy on a USB drive and a searchable PDF file of the text portion of your proposal only. Do not include the costs. Section 2.5.11. Please note, copyrighted proposals are unacceptable and may be rejected. Section 2.6 covers the format and contents for which your proposal must be organized, which includes letter of transmittal, executive summary, either a blanket acknowledgement of Part 1, 2, and 3, or a section-by-section response to Part 1, 2, and 3, section-by-section response to Part 4, 6, 7, and 8, see Section 2.5.4, sealed cost proposal attached to original proposal only if submitting a printed version, or one separate PDF if submitting electronically. An Attachment A, proposer commitment, Attachment D1, background information certification. Section 2.7, letter of transmittal. This must state that the proposal is valid for 180 days, an overview of why your company is most qualified, and include a statement accepting the terms and conditions in Part 3 and/or any exceptions to such. Section 2.8, executive summary. Executive summary should be a full and complete summary and not exceed 5 pages. Section 2.10, cost proposal. Cost proposal must be in the format included in Attachment H, either in a separately sealed envelope as an attachment to the original proposal or separate PDF. We only need the one signed original. Disclosure of costs in the body of the written proposal is cause for disqualification. The sealed envelope should only contain cost proposal. Do not include any marketing material or other information in your sealed cost proposal. The sealed cost proposal is not open or viewed until after the proposal is scored on its technical merit. Therefore, any additional materials that are included in the sealed envelope will not be evaluated. Section 2.11. Proposers may submit only one proposal and one cost proposal. Section 2.12. Any RFP changes, modification, or cancellation will be posted on the ESBD and the Texas Lottery's website. Section 2.15. Proposals evaluation. Scoring matrix is Attachment G and will be used for evaluation of proposals in response to this RFP. Please note there are 2 pass-fail categories, HSP and financial analysis. Your proposal essentially goes through 4 phases once it's submitted. 1, initial assessment for compliance and completeness. 2, it is reviewed for financial and HSP analysis. 3, it is reviewed and evaluated for its technical merit. And 4, the cost proposal is open and reviewed. If at any given time your proposal is disqualified, you will receive a notice stating such. Angela, are there any questions for Part 2?
Yes, there are a few questions. So the first one is there a preference for hard copy or electronic submission? The answer is the Texas Lottery does not have a preference. We're giving you the option of submitting your proposal either way. The next question was about seeing the agenda on the screen and not the RFP. That is correct. We are not showing the RFP on the screen. It's available on our websites for anyone to view. The next question is, do all proposers undergo the background checks or is it just the successful proposer? And the answer to that is it is only the apparent successful proposer. Next question, please confirm we only need to submit a hard copy or electronic copy as described. Both are not required, correct? Correct, both are not required. You need to submit it one way or the other, and our preference would be that you only submit it one way or the other. If you happen to submit it both ways, the RFP states which one will be reviewed. I don't see any other questions at this time, Roxanne.
Thank you, Angela. I will now go over Part 3, Contractual Terms and Conditions. This part describes the terms and conditions which apply to the procurement process and which will become part of the contract executed pursuant to this RFP. Please read over this entire RFP document to ensure that you fully understand and will comply with all provisions. Any exceptions to the RFP should be clearly stated in the letter of transmittal, providing specific and detailed reasons for each exceptions together with suggested alternative language. The contract resulting from the RFP will incorporate the RFP, any amendments, the questions and responses, the contractor's proposal, and the cost proposal. Please note a performance bond is required under Section 3.35 for the contract resulting from the RFP and is required under the State Lottery Act. Therefore, we cannot accept alternatives. Under Section 3.56.1, the contractor may be required to take the Texas Lottery's cybersecurity training program and sign its information security agreement. In addition, Section 3.56.2, Cloud Computing, and 3.56.3, Data Protection, are recently new laws that have passed. Are there any questions for Part 3?
Yes, we had one new question. The question is there criteria for the financial status? And the answer to that is there's no published criteria per se for financial status. You need to submit the documentation that is requested in Part 4 of the RFP, which Roxanne will go over in just a minute in a little more detail. But you need to submit the information that's requested in that section, and then that is what the lottery uses to make a determination of financial analysis. And I don't see any more, Roxanne.
Okay, thank you. Part 4, Required Information. Sections 4.1 through 4.3. Although these sections seem brief in the RFP, these sections do require proposers to gather, compile, and submit a great deal of detailed documentation. Please read these sections thoroughly and provide all the information in your section-by-section response. Section 4.4, Conflict of Interest. In this section, you are asked to disclose any actual, potential, and/or perceived conflict of interest. Please review this section and make any disclosure. Section 4.5, Financial Soundness. Texas Lottery Commission does a thorough financial analysis of all proposals. Please provide the information requested under this section. If you feel this information is confidential, please mark it as such. This is a pass-fail category on the scoring matrix. It is critical that you provide the requested information. Section 4.6, Background Investigation. TLC reserves the right to conduct an in-depth background investigation on the apparent successful proposer. Section 4.6.2, a background investigation may be conducted on contractual defined vendor principle. Those who will be directly involved in selling or leasing the goods or performing the services subject to this RFP or resulting contract. This includes partners, shareholders, officers, directors who are directly involved. Section 4.6.3, background investigations may be conducted on vendor employees who meet one or more of the criteria under this section. This contract requires a background investigation of employees on site at the Texas Lottery Commission. Background investigation will include fingerprinting. The apparent successful proposer may be required to complete all forms included in Attachment E of the RFP by the subscribed time after the written announcement of the apparent successful proposer by the Texas Lottery. If you feel the information you are providing in Attachment E is confidential, please mark it as such. As mentioned before, we ask that all proposers complete and submit Attachment D1 with its proposal. This is a certification that your company will not be denied a sales agent license under Texas Government Code 466.155, which is Attachment D in the RFP. Section 4.7, Disclosure of Interested Parties. If requested, the successful proposer will be required to fill out a 1295 form with the Texas Ethics Commission. Are there any questions for Part 4, Angela?
So we have one new question, Roxanne, and actually it is for Eric, who's about to start speaking, I believe, in a minute. The question is, is it required that the proposer subcontract 24.3% of the contract and Hub to pass? Eric, would you like to answer that question?
That requirement is for option 1A, or meeting the Hub goal, right? If you're meeting the Hub goal, then yes, you will have to subcontract with the Hub for 24.3%. And I will discuss that further in detail coming up shortly.
I do not see any additional questions, Roxanne.
Thank you, Angela. So we are at Section 5, HSP, which I am now going to turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Roxanne, and good afternoon. My name is Eric Williams, and I am the Hub Coordinator for the Texas Lottery Commission. I'll be covering a very crucial element of your proposal, the Hub Subcontracting Plan, or HSP. If you're not the individual responsible for preparing the Hub Subcontracting Plan, please pass this information to them and recommend they watch the video of this proposal conference, which will be posted on the agency website as well as the SBD. The Hub Subcontracting Plan is used to identify both Hub and non-Hub subcontractors that will be utilized under the awarded contract. All proposers, whether Hub or non-Hub, are required to submit a response to the RFP. No one is exempt from submitting an HSP. As Roxanne previously mentioned, the HSP is a pass or fail element of this RFP. No evaluation points are given for the HSP, and proposers must submit an HSP with their proposal regardless of their subcontracting intentions. Any proposal received, not including an HSP, will be rejected, and the technical portion will not be evaluated. So it's important to submit a completed HSP with your proposal. Also, during the reviewing process, if it is determined that your submitted HSP has failed, your proposal will be disqualified and will not be evaluated. The HSP process is governed by a rule established by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. Per Section 5.1 of the RFP, you are responsible for reviewing this rule. The definition of a subcontractor is very broad and applies to any third-party vendor used to fulfill a portion of the contract. Our definition of a subcontractor is a person who contracts with the successful proposer to work, to supply commodities, or contribute toward completing work for the Texas Lottery Commission. In other words, if the successful proposer who is awarded this contract is paying anyone who is not an employee to provide good and/or services, they are very likely subcontracting under this definition. These individuals would receive a 1099, unlike your employees who would receive a W-2. Self-performance. A proposer who identifies that their company will not be subcontracting any portion of the contract will be fulfilling the entire contract with their own resources, including its own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, will be self-performing. Keep in mind that a pre-existing subcontracting relationship is considered subcontracting, in which case you cannot claim self-performance. A pre-existing subcontracting relationship is a business affiliation your company has with a third-party vendor who is currently supplying your company with goods and/or services, and will continue to supply those goods and/or services to assist you in the performance of this contract. If you determine that your company is capable of fulfilling the entire contract with your own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, please check the appropriate box in Section 2, Respondent Subcontracting Intentions of the HSP form. Complete Section 3, which is the self-performing justification, by providing a thorough explanation of how your company will perform the entire contract with its own employees, supplies, materials, and/or equipment as it relates to Part 6 of the RFP, the scope of service. Complete Section 4 of the HSP form, the affirmation, prior to submitting your HSP with your proposal. If you're not self-performing, you will need to proceed with the good faith effort of the HSP. We have identified potential subcontracting opportunities in Section 5.5.1 of the RFP. These areas may or may not be subcontracted, depending upon the proposer's existing resources, employees, and business model. You are not limited to the list in the RFP. However, if you intend to subcontract any portion of the contract and it's not listed, you are responsible for identifying it in your HSP submission. We have included in the RFP a list of hub vendors by CMBL class and commodity description to assist you in finding potential hub vendors. The Lottery Commission does not endorse, recommend, or attest to the capabilities of any company or individual listed within the RFP or on the CMBL Hub search directory. Good faith effort methods are for those proposers who intend to subcontract any portion of the contract. The goal of this good faith effort is to actively involve hubs in the Texas procurement process and ensure they receive a fair share of state business. Please check the appropriate boxes in Section 2, which is the respondent subcontracting intentions of the HSP form, and perform one of the 3 good faith effort methods. The optional quick checklist will assist you in determining which of the 3 methods you should use. Good faith effort method A has 2 options. Method A, option 1, this option is for the proposer who will use only Texas certified hubs for all subcontracting opportunities listed in Section 2B, the respondent subcontracting intentions on the HSP forms. If you use this method, please verify online that the hub vendor is still an active hub listed on the CMBL. Method A, option 2, which is meeting the specified hub contract goal. This option is for the proposer who will use a combination of non-hubs and Texas certified hubs. However, to meet the specified hub contract goal of 24.3%, the proposer can only count those hubs which you have contracted with for 5 years or less. If you're going to subcontract and cannot claim method A1 or A2, then you must submit your HSP using method B, which is the good faith effort outreach. And this is done by notifying at least 3 Texas certified hubs per subcontracting opportunity, providing those hubs with at least 7 working days to respond, excluding the day the solicitation was mailed, emailed, faxed to the hub vendors, weekends, holidays, and any day that our executive director has closed the agency. It also includes providing the scope of work for hubs to determine whether they are interested, providing a location where the specifications are located, and this link can be posted on the ESBD or a physical location within your organization, within your company. Information regarding insurance and bonding requirements is if applicable. Also, in addition, notifying a minimum of 2 minority women trade organizations and/or business development centers providing the same information above, as well as the same time frame for the response. A mentor may utilize a protege from a state agency sponsored mentor protege agreement for the subcontracting if the protege is able to provide the services. The mentor protege relationship may be utilized in lieu of additional solicitation to any additional hubs. Proposers using this method must perform outreach even for areas where a proposer has a pre-existing or exclusive subcontracting relationship that will be used in the performance of this contract. Our evaluation process for proposals received on or before the deadline for proposals is to review and evaluate the HSP and all supporting documentation to determine if the HSP has passed or failed. During our review, we may request clarification of information or representation in your submitted HSP. Again, there are no evaluation points assigned to the HSP. It is strictly a pass or fail element. If it is determined that your HSP has failed, the technical portion of your proposal will not be evaluated. Following the award of the contract, any proposed changes to the HSP must be submitted for review and approval by the agency. A written change approval form will be provided by the Lottery Commission. Subcontracting without prior authorization is a breach of contract. Monthly subcontracting expenditure reports are required as a condition of payment. Also, the successful proposer must provide written notice to each subcontractor informing them of their selection. A copy of this notice must be provided to the Lottery Commission no later than 10 working days after the contract is awarded, as stated in section 5.6.1. This notice must specify at a minimum the contracting agency's name and its point of contact for the contract, the contract award number, the subcontracting opportunity to be performed, the appropriate dollar value of the subcontracting opportunity, and the expected percentage of the total contract that the subcontracting opportunity represents. To assist you with the HSP, the Lottery Commission provides the following resources and assistance. All vendors are strongly encouraged to take advantage of all the resources. As Roxanne mentioned, this pre-proposal conference video will be posted on the agency website. A copy of the TLC's pre-bid proposal conference booklet regarding HSP requirements is available on the agency's website. An HSP quick checklist is included in the RFP. Proposers have the opportunity to submit HSP questions up until the date of your proposal submission. However, we suggest you submit questions early to allow yourself the opportunity or the time necessary to cure any deficiencies within your plan. You are encouraged to start working on your plan right away to give yourself plenty of time. The HSP Q&A is posted on the agency website as well as the ESBD, which will be a rolling document, so be sure to check the date posted. We will review drafts of your HSP to identify deficiencies and provide feedback. However, we will not state whether your draft has passed or failed. We will provide one-on-one workshops upon request. These may be conducted via Zoom, Teams, or a telephone conference call. As per section 2.1 of the RFP, please forward all questions or requests to Roxanne. The last date to review any draft HSPs for deficiencies and one-on-one workshops is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. Again, we strongly encourage you to take full advantage of all the available resources to assist you with your HSP submission. Once you submit your HSP with the proposal, there is no opportunity to cure. Please consult the schedule of events and make sure that you know which dates are critical in terms of preparing and submitting the HSP. In closing, I'll remind you again, if you're not the person who is responsible for completing the HSP, Please pass this information to them, as well as let them know that today's pre-proposal conference will be available for review on the agency website. Please submit questions regarding the HSP after this conference in writing, and they will be answered and posted on the agency website and the ESBD. HSP questions can be submitted up until the deadline for proposals, which is listed again in section 1.4 of the RFP. And at this point, are there any questions about part 5 of the RFP?
Hi, Eric. There are a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
The first one being, since this is such a large contract for those Hub certified agencies planning to self-perform, does the Texas Lottery encourage those agencies to use Hub subcontractors?
As far as suggesting or requesting that, we don't, because we don't know the makeup of your company, right? You're the only person who knows the ins and outs of your company, so we leave that totally up to the individual and the company that is submitting the proposal.
And I'll just add to that a little bit. If you are self-performing, that means, as Eric said earlier, that you have to have everything in-house and that you're not essentially writing a check to somebody else to do it, because that would be subcontracting, because that definition of subcontracting is very broad. So keep that in mind. All right, the next question, Eric, is, do proposers need to be registered with Texas as a hub, or will other state equivalent certifications suffice?
For Hub certification, it only qualifies if you are registered with the state of Texas. Any other qualification through any other entity does not count or qualify as a Hub certification. The Office of Controller controls that. They approve all of the certificates and the certifications. So in order to do that, you will have to go through them to submit paperwork. But yes, that is correct. The only certification, the only Hub certification that we will accept is from the state of Texas.
Correct. I do not see any other questions. I would like to say one other thing. We mentioned this earlier a couple of times, but if you are a subcontractor or even a prime looking for a subcontractor, we post the sign-in sheet from this conference so that y'all are able to see who's interested in the RFP and partner up. So be sure to look at that after the conference. And I have one more question, Eric. Is a media vendor considered a subcontractor such as a radio buy?
Yes. That will be subcontracting. Again, as we stated before, that, you know, if you can't do everything in-house, if they're not affiliated with your organization, then that would be considered subcontracting.
I do not see any. Nope. No additional questions, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Roxanne, I'll pass it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Angela. Let's see, for part 6, 7, and 8, scope of services. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Mendel, Lottery Operations Division Director, who will give you a high-level overview of the scope of services. Ryan?
Thanks, Roxanne. Hi, everyone. This is Ryan Mendel, Lottery Operations Director. I'll be brief. I just wanted to note for context for everyone a few things about Section 678 and kind of the historical path that this contract has gone under. So our budget for advertising services used to be significantly higher. We've gone from 33 million to 24 million to 17 million to now $10 million for the size of this service. So we have had to be incredibly adaptive and flexible, both internally and with our contracted partners, and how we kind of approach this this service and how we're talking to Texans. So I wanted to flag that for everyone for a couple of reasons. One, that the scope, and when we talk about 6, 7, and 8, but especially Section 7, it's different than what we've done in the past. And that's intentional, and that's because of this new approach and the new budget that we're facing. We want to make sure that we are doing this the right way. And so, this is a change for us, but I think it's going to be a positive one. So I wanted everyone to know a little bit about that history. If you have the experience with this or not, it's important that you know that, and it's important that you read that section very carefully so you understand the new approach that we're taking here. So that's all I wanted to share, and I'll turn it back over to Roxanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So part 6, 7, and 8 requires a section-by-section response. I will not be going into details on these sections. This is your opportunity to tell us how you will perform the services described in each section. It's not enough to say that you can do something, tell us how you would do it. Provide examples of techniques that you've used for success. Proposers need to demonstrate their abilities to do the work requested. Are there any questions for part 6, 7, or 8, Angela?
Roxanne, there are no new questions at this time.
Okay. We are towards the end of our conference. Please submit any questions in the Q&A feature, or you can submit questions in accordance with the schedule of events. Here are some final reminders. All scope of services questions must be submitted in writing via email to me by the deadline in the schedule of events. Scope of services questions that are not submitted in writing by the time and date specified will not be answered. If you have a question on the RFP process, you can contact me and I will be able to respond. Generally, this is the case for all sections except for parts 6, 7, and 8, but do not hesitate to ask. Make note of all dates in the schedule of events. Proposers are responsible for checking the ESBD and the TLC website for any and all notices, amendments, and Q&A regarding this RFP. We will not directly email these to you. Emails are used after proposals are submitted for any direct communication. Prior to submission of your proposal, please review the entire RFP carefully to ensure that you submit all required information and/or documentation. The pre-proposal conference video and the sign-in sheet will be on the websites prior to the end of the next business days. So before we go, I want to ask, are there any final questions?
Yes, there are a few more questions. So I will read them. Looks like they will be for Ryan and/or Heidi. Is there any rationale that can be shared as to why the media buying is now contracted separately from creative? Ryan or
Yes.
Heidi?
I'll take a stab at that. And again, it goes back to that context I shared. When we were operating under, a $25 or $33 million contract, I think we could fit a lot more into this. And so what we found, it's 2022, and it's sometimes easier to concept and deliver a creative side than it is the media buy. And so again, this is a change for us, but we think it's one that's going to let us be a little bit more flexible, and it's going to let us approach this budget environment that we're in more successfully.
All right, the next question is, how long is the Billboard contract in effect, as it is a large part of budget?
Good afternoon, this is Heidi. As stated in section 8.1.4a, the permanent billboards, Texas Lottery has entered into a 2-year agreement with 95 permanent boards throughout the state of Texas. So that commitment would end at the end of August of 23.
Okay. The next question is, will all creative assets be developed and managed by the Texas Lottery?
This is Ryan. I can take a first stab at that. I think it's not all creative assets that we receive are necessarily, I would say, developed and managed. I'm not sure what everyone's definition of those words, but for instance, we might, through a partnership on an experiential partner, like just hypothetically the Dallas Cowboys, or a licensed property that we get access to through a ticket, for instance, something like Monopoly, right? We often will get assets in other fashions like that. So, the idea is that, we are certainly going to have that creative control, but, I would not say that every single asset is going to be developed by the Texas Lottery. And, we might, there might be other ways that I'm not thinking of today, but I just want to make sure I flag that.
All right, and I think this may be a follow-up to that question. To clarify, the creative will be provided and the contract will just be to plan and buy.
Yeah, more or less that's the concept here. So in other words, we're, as the way the contract is today, we would not be asking the vendor to, come up with a creative. Now, look, we want to work collaboratively. If there were, not saying that it would be impossible, but the contract as scoped would be, it's for the placement, and the creative would be coming from us.
All right, the next question is, what is the current commission rate for advertising placed?
Angela, I don't know if I understand that question.
Okay, so that's a question that we will respond to in writing. So everybody be sure to read the recapped Q&A because that will be our final answer. The next question is, can you share the most significant changes made to the media scope as it currently is being managed versus what will be managed for FY23?
I'll take a stab at that. This is Ryan again. I think for the current versus the FY23, I'm not sure there's going to be a significant change. I mean, that's one of the things that we would be looking at. I mean, obviously beyond the things that relate to the scope of this contract. So for instance, creative, there might be other pieces of that we're going to be doing in-house or separately, like printed point of sale materials, right? But as far as the scope of what we're going to be out there in the media market, that's still going to be driven by the budget. I don't think that we'd make significant changes, but we would want to see what was proposed, and we would have that collaborative discussion at the time.
All right, thank you, Ryan. The next question, is there a deduction if 7 references are not available? So I'll take this one. The answer to that is we're asking for 7 references. If you can provide them, please do so. What I would say to that is references are references. There's not what I'm going to call a deduction of anything, but we're looking for people obviously who can provide that reference to us. So that's the number that we're looking for. If you have less and you can't provide 7, provide what you can, and your proposal is still going to be evaluated. All right, the next question is, what is the FY22 budget?
$10 million.
All right, and following that, will there be an RFP for creative services, or will creative be done in-house?
There is no plan to do an RFP for creative services at this time.
Thank you, Ryan. Will the final delivery date be extended since its pre-conference was delayed? If there are any updates to the schedule of events, those will be posted on our website and the Electronic State Business Daily. The schedule was already amended regarding the conference. So next question is to the clarification. Okay, next question, is location a factor in choosing the awardee? For example, are Texas agencies preferred for this campaign? I can take that one if you want, Ryan. There's no preferences. All proposals will be evaluated based on their merit. Following that, if a contractor can fulfill both creative and media, will they be eligible to bid for both contracts?
I would just repeat that there's no plan for an RFP for creative services at this time.
All right. What portion of the budget do the 95 contracted boards represent?
That is stated again in section 8.1.4A. It does give you the total dollar amount of the current jackpot boards for FY22. And again, the overall budget is $10 million.
Okay, and then we had a clarification from a previous question. For the out-of-home commitment, does that mean the $10 million budget, roughly 5.8 million, is already committed to the proposer? Will only place 4.2 million for FY23.
That is correct.
Okay, and then we have, is there an incumbent for this business?
Well, what I would say is that, again, we have a current advertising contract that has an incumbent. The scope of this contract that we're talking about today is different. So I don't know how you want to define incumbent, but there is someone providing us advertising services, including those covered by this contract today, yes.
All right, I do not see any new questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Angela. And thank you, Heidi and Ryan, for answering questions. This concludes our conference. I hope everyone has a great evening, and thanks again for your attendance.